Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for Monday, June 10th. Madam Clerk, could we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Wilkinson.
Present.
Councilmember Cooper.
Present.
Mayor Mark.
Present.
Councilmember Kemnitzer.
Present.
For the record, Councilmember Lynch is absent.
Thank you. Let's start with City Council reports. Vice Mayor, I believe you have some reports.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know that Peter and I will be attending the Housing Elements Subcommittee meeting this week to set more goals for our third submission. And we anticipate finalizing this draft in August, if things go well. The other thing I wanted to announce is that unfortunately, a puppy was attacked last week by 2 coyotes up on Bella Vista Avenue. And the yard was sort of fenced, partially fenced. Unfortunately, it was open to the street without any fencing there. But very thankfully, the dog's healing well, and I visited it on Friday. Very cute, very happy, very energetic. The question I keep getting is, why are coyotes here now and they've never been here before? And actually, Belvedere is very attractive for all of us, and it's very attractive for the coyotes too. There's a lot of ivy and bushes, quiet streets, plenty of rodents, construction sites, and vacant homes. And because we are so small and compact, the impact is felt in an outsized way. The city will still continue to respond and help residents protect their pets and protect their property whenever they contact us, submitting a form or by phone. So I just wanted to announce that the dog is fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further City Council reports?
On June 20th, I will be attending the General Assembly on behalf of Belvedere of the Association of Bay Area Governments.
Thank you so much. Call for public comment on the City Council reports. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, anybody online?
Mayor Mark, there are no hands raised, but may I ask council to please speak into their mics? Thank you.
Absolutely. See that in our budget item tonight, we see an upgrade to the council chamber audio, so that will hopefully be repaired soon. Thank you. Moving on to our city manager's report, I'll now invite our city manager to present.
Thank you, Mayor Mark. I'll start off by saying that I'm pleased to announce our selections for the summer internship. This year we had a lot of interest. Over 12 applicants submitted applications. Staff reviewed those internally and selected 2 students for the program, Sydney Mosley and Robert Wilson. Sydney is a first-year student at UCLA, majoring in mathematics with an applied science focus and a minor in Spanish. She brings a wealth of skills in data analysis, computing systems, and communications. Sydney is strongly committed to community service, as evidenced by her extensive volunteer work, including tutoring and leadership roles in various community projects. Robert Wilson is a recent graduate from Vanderbilt University with a degree in architecture and a minor in earth and environmental sciences. Robert will be starting his master's in architecture at UC Berkeley this fall. His academic background and practical experience in architecture design, coupled with his connection to Belvedere, a position to contribute meaningfully to the city's planning and development initiatives. So depending on their interests, Robert and Sydney will be working on projects ranging from climate action planning to analyzing revocable license areas within the city and working on the city's cost recovery model. Again, congratulations to both of them. We look forward to working with Sydney and Robert. Moving on, I want to ensure that the community is aware of what's happening in the background with Mallard Point tonight and going forward. I'll plan on providing general updates every month on their progress. As you are aware, the project's tentative map was approved in May. Since then, The developer has met with the BLPOA to discuss bulkhead installation and have a meeting scheduled on June 13th with our planning and building department. The goal of the June 13th meeting is to review the general building permit process and permit process for demolition and infrastructure work. The Mallard Development Team has also reached out to the planning commissioners, one of the planning commissioners, to go over the final landscaping plan. Our planning and building departments will continue to post submittals concerning Mallard Point on the city's website. We'll also publicize these monthly updates on the Mallard Point page at a regular interval as the project develops. On the topic of vegetation management, we are more than halfway through the curbside pickup program. You've probably noted the signs around town advertising this free service. This is the time of year when the weeds dry out and can cause increased fire risk for our community. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to walk your property, keeping an eye out for dense vegetation, dry grass, and dead limbs or trees. Throughout July, you can place that material on the edge of the curb fronting your home, and Public Works will remove it at no cost to you. Details on how to safely place that material are available on the city's website, or you can contact the city and ask for Tony Boyd in Public Works. And then finally, I want to remind everyone that this Saturday from noon to 2 p.m. is the barbecue in the park. And on Sunday, join concerts in the park starting at 4 p.m. That's all.
Thank you so much. Just real quick, do you have a sense from the Mallard Point, in relation to the Mallard Point project, have they updated their timing as far as potential submittals go?
Not that I'm aware.
So it's still the year plus from their the planning approval at the time. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Mark, if
Yes,
I
please.
may, just a comment. I wanted to thank staff, in addition to alerting private residents about removal of fire fuel. I have noticed that in the public open spaces throughout the city, this city staff is also working very hard to keep our residents safe, and I just wanted to compliment you on that. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions to the city manager and his report? Thank you. When you get further down the road with those responsibilities or tasks for Sydney and Robert, it'd be great to get an update on the items that they're working on and expected deliverables on those.
Yeah, and I can add to that, the idea, and Rebecca and I will be discussing their work schedules and programs. We'd love for them to be able to come, if they're still here in August, to the city council meeting, perhaps, if their work is concluded by then, or perhaps even sooner.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Open up the public comment period for the city manager's report. Don't see anybody here.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you so much. Moving on, item 3C is interviews for applicants for appointment to the following committees. We have the, I'm going to go down the list in the, we'll start with the Parks and Open Space and Lanes Committee. And I believe we spoke with Wayne Stacy last week, correct? Last month, I
in May,
apologize.
correct. Yes,
Yeah,
we
and
interviewed them.
we don't have at this point, we don't have anyone here this evening to speak for the other open positions.
That's correct. We did have another application that came in late.
So we'll see, we'll hopefully review that candidacy next month.
Correct.
Okay. And then the Belvedere Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee, we have one application for that, which we also heard last week. So we'll consider that with this motion, correct? From
Yes,
Jeff.
correct.
And then the Planning Commission, and we have 3 terms that expire, and all 3 incumbents have respectfully declined. So we have 3 candidates to potentially speak to tonight. Can I ask if Justin Boutros is here this evening?
Justin is joining us via Zoom.
Okay, wonderful. Justin, say hi when you're. Hey, Justin, how are you?
Hi, greetings.
Why
Mayor
don't
Mark
you
and council?
thank you. We've all read your letter. Thank you very much. Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself and perhaps mention anything that may not be in the letter, and then we'll have time for the council members to ask you questions.
Absolutely, and apologize for my absence. I will plan to absolutely be there for any further meetings, but happen to be needed abroad and couldn't get out of it. Things that would not come to light in the brief description in the letter that I think are relevant. My background is rather complex and varied from what a traditional architecture route would be. What I think might be a benefit to the town of Belvedere and to the commission would be my understanding of various roles within any project, from civic through small scale residential. I worked in a variety of different capacities, from builder to designer to engineer to all three, under various contract mechanisms and various means and methods, complexities, and design standards. And I would love to contribute in a meaningful way to the community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Can I ask if any council members have questions for Justin? Please, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Justin. This is Jane Cooper. I'm afraid we haven't met, but nice to meet you online. I just wondered, have you had time to speak to any planning commissioners who already serve right now?
I have. I've spoke with the chair, Pat, and was able to get a brief understanding of the process and the logistics in terms of monthly meetings, what the reports entail, and the site visits. They all sound relatively clear, and I know that each project will be different, as design review is inherently the process of evaluating something that is in some way outside in the general scope of planning and building.
Okay, I don't know if she mentioned it or not, but sometimes, or at least recently, our planning commission has been very involved also in other committee work that has gone on for the city besides strictly home applications. So I hope that that's something that you'd also be able to have time to participate in if it should come up. Other than that, I just wondered if I didn't catch your address. Where do you live?
Yeah, I live at 176 Madrona and the Johnson House, the William Worcester House.
Okay, thanks. And have you had a chance to sign up for our Belvedere Breeze e-newsletter yet? Something that
I
comes out once
apologize.
a month.
No, absolutely.
Well,
I would love
get
to
you
know.
signed up right away. We want you to be sure you have it coming to you as well. So thank you. That's
Thank
all.
you. Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. You're extraordinarily qualified, so I don't have any questions other than what you've put in your letter. So thank you for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Yes, this is Nancy Kemitzer. I also wanted to thank you for stepping up. How long have you lived in Belvedere? I think I'm familiar with the house.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
just
It
kind
is.
of, what is your sort of familiarity with Belvedere, which is somewhat unique in
Absolutely.
topography, architecture, and environment. So just an open question as to how long you've lived here and what your impressions are.
Thank you for asking, because it is something in the back of my mind, being so new. And I would like to clarify that I'm renting. I've only been here a few months, and in that short time, I've honestly been astonished and really put at ease with the connection of the community. And I think how this all came to start was a conversation with James Kemble, former Mayor James Kemble, who we were speaking about the built environment, and I had mentioned that, you know, it really is a beautiful thing of the boundary lines are the lines that connect us as a community rather than divide us. And with that as a concept, I think it's, you create the community that everyone wants to live in. And I think that's the goal. I don't have deep knowledge. I've not done any projects on Belvedere, but I do see it as a microcosm of both Marin in general, which I've done many projects in, as well as a microcosm of township at large. I imagine that Belvedere sees itself as an example to be of the highest standard and quality across the board on any issue. And I've just found that it's kind of a beautiful thing when such a small place can have so much beauty, first and foremost, and also to be quite tight-knit and varied, from architectural standards to historic landmarks. I think there's a beautiful variety of spaces that tell many stories. And I really do think that those are powerful and important stories to tell.
Thank you. And thank you again for stepping up.
Hi, Justin. Thank you. This is Peter once again. Thank you so much for your letter and for your interest in the Planning Commission. We will be voting on this letter. I wanted to, I agree with the sentiment here that you're exceptionally qualified for this, and I'm looking forward to that further discussion. I would like to add that should the appointment be made, that you take advantage of the wealth of experience in this community of people who've served on the Planning Commission, who have lived here for a long time, who have that experience to, and as a matter of fact, 3 of the commissioners who are not renewing their terms this next month included, and you know, you mentioned James Campbell as well, to fast track your experience in the city and to fast track your ability to be really a viable commissioner above and beyond your experience. So thank you so much, and we're looking forward to discuss this later on this evening. You can stick around, or you can, it'll probably be, you know, 30, 40 minutes before the actual appointments take place. Thank you for your interest, and we'll speak to you a little bit later.
Understood. I appreciate the time. Thank you for the opportunity, and look forward to talking further and being a beneficial member of the community.
Thank you so much. The next candidate, Jenna Watson. Is Jenna here, or is she likewise on Zoom?
She's also on Zoom. I'll promote her to a panelist.
Jenna, speak up when you're there.
Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, good. I
There you
had a
go.
I had a Dr. Rothman moment. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone.
Hi.
Hi. I apologize also for not being there. I am actually in Georgia with my parents and my son. School just got out, and so we are taking advantage of the somewhat cooler temperatures in Georgia to visit now. So
Well, please go ahead and add anything you wish to above and beyond your note, which is quite
Okay.
comprehensive.
good. I believe that I have met and worked with every one of the city council members. I just wanted to reiterate, we have lived in Belvedere for 8 years, and for the past 4 years, I have tried to become a more involved and beneficial member of the Belvedere community. And I've been on the Parks, Open Spaces, and Lanes committee, which I've really, really enjoyed. And my application for the Planning Commission is not to leave parks, but to not to run away from the Parks Committee, but to try to contribute in other ways, especially given my professional background as a project finance lawyer. So that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Jenna? Please.
I have a few questions. Jenna, thank you so much for stepping up to this position. I think we all know, certainly all on this council know of your excellent work. You've reported to us on your activities as Chair of Parks and Open Space. And what occurred to me when I saw your application is how much you would bring to the commission in terms of your deep knowledge of Belvedere and the relationship between public open space and private development in this community. I think that is striking that balance and understanding of the issues involved is really part of what makes Belvedere Belvedere. And I think that the commission will be very well served. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's actually one of the things that has been really beneficial to the Parks and Open Spaces Committee is that when the charter was changed a couple of years ago, it gave the Parks it gave the Parks Committee real insight into some of the private development that was affecting and that was abutting some of the public land. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed over the last couple of years is being able to work with staff on how we can improve public space at the same time that private space is being improved as well. And I really enjoy walking my fat Labrador around Belvedere and seeing all the improvements that have been made. So it's really nice.
Thank you.
Well, Jenna, it's Jane here. Thank you for stepping up to the Planning Commission, but I just had to say I'll miss you over at Parks and Open Space Lane.
I'm not dying.
Okay. Well, whenever you're done, we'll miss you after that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I don't have any further questions, and I don't see Sally having any either. So thank you so much for your consideration
Thank you.
for this position. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be making the appointments later on in the agenda this evening.
Great. Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank you very much for this opportunity.
And third candidate, Don, is he here? Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. Hi.
It is. Thank you, Mayor Mark and council members. My name is Don Shinsky. Happy to be considered for the Planning Commission. And speaking with Mayor Mark, I got more excited just thinking about it more and more. I've actually been in Marin County for 30 plus years. First 10 of those, I was out in Point Reyes. I co-owned the newspaper out there. Spent a lot of time covering the Marin Planning Commission while I was about it. Raised my family in Novato. 7 years ago, I fell in love for the final time in my life, I guess. And by happy accident, Jennifer lived here in Belvedere, and I've been here ever since. That's probably a longer win streak than any one person deserves, but I'm certainly fortunate. Professionally, I've been a lobbyist, managed some statewide professional societies over the last 10 years, do some nonprofit work with a couple environmental groups. And that is winding down just a little bit. I'm not leaving any of those things tomorrow, but it's going to be kind of a long goodbye to my professional life. It's always been on my mind that once that happens, I want to turn my life to this arena that I've sort of been involved with and circulating among most of my life, because I happen to believe in government, not politics, a little bit less so, but government. I'm always the first to say that if you actually look at it fairly closely, it seems to be working just fine overall. So happy to do my part.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions for Don?
Hi, Don. I liked your letter. It was different from many that we've reviewed in the past, and I was interested in your description there of some of the ups and downs that residents have in their relationships with cities through their planning experience, and
Sure.
which I think is extremely correct. And I'm curious where you see, in your experience with other communities, obvious room for improvement. Is there anything that automatic jumps out at you?
Well, from what I've seen here, actually, the process actually works pretty darn well. I mean, it's there have been obviously in recent years a couple big issues that have kind of stretched probably what people have normally considered. It normally comes up on the docket here in Belvedere, and by all accounts, or I should say that, by many accounts, the city acquitted itself just fine, and so I'm not sure. Let's put it this way. I'm not presumptuous enough to say, oh yeah, these things can be improved. If anything, I think, what I can bring is probably more of the same, which is to say, I kind of appreciate, the delicate arena that the Planning Commission is, where kind of individual property owners come forward with their, hopes and dreams, and I would really like to have this, and and sometimes that jibes with what the public wants, and sometimes it doesn't. And there's a space there for some sort of negotiation, and a lot of listening. So I think I bring a certain sensitivity, I guess, to the work that's probably required.
Thank you.
Hi again, Don.
Hi.
I had a question that I also asked to Justin, and that is, have you had an opportunity to speak with any of the current planning commissioners?
I have not. My conversation with Mayor Mark, well, yeah.
Current, I said current.
Um,
I didn't say former.
Was just a few days ago. Maybe it was more than a few days ago. So no, I haven't yet.
Okay. Well, as Mayor Mark mentioned to Justin, I'd also recommend that you be sure to check in with as many of them as you can, because they really have so much experience that they'll gladly share with you, I know, and make your opportunities there smoother and more efficient.
I
So
would need the help. Yes, thank you.
that's it. Thank you.
Hi, Don. Thank you so much for stepping up to the commission. I have a couple questions. Your letter was very interesting to me also, a little different than we sometimes see.
Sure.
I'm a longtime fan of the Point Reyes Light. You did some really really great work with that. And I think that our local paper, people who work so hard for our local paper would also understand, as I'm sure you do, that there are so often 2 sides to an issue, sometimes 5 sides to an issue. And I was pleased to see that you approach that with a certain sensitivity. So it's a different kind of experience that comes to us, but I think one that would be very helpful, realistic, candid, and broad-based to the commission. You said it, but I wasn't quite sure. How long have you actually lived in Belvedere?
Full-time for, I guess, over 4 years. Yes,
Yeah.
The point at which I didn't leave again was COVID.
Okay, good
When it
enough.
stopped, I was in the right place.
That's great. Well, I'm pleased to see an applicant from West Shore Road. I can't remember when we've had a planning commissioner, and we do really like to see planning commissioners from different parts of the city. So I think that in and of itself will bring great experience to the commission. And I liked the idea that you have had experience as a consumer of services from planning departments, and not everybody on the commission has. I think that's very, very beneficial. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just like to add that I did enjoy our conversation. I appreciate likewise you stepping up to the Planning Commission consideration. And also want to point out, similar to what Vice Mayor Cooper talked about earlier, broader responsibilities than the Planning Commission itself. And where your Sacramento experience might come in handy is over the next, couple months, as we, 6 months perhaps, as we evolve our housing element committees, so forth. That might be beneficial to help us make our case at some point. So I would
I have no conflicts.
ask you to consider that as well. Don, thanks so much. And like I mentioned, to the other candidates, we will be appointing later on in the agenda.
Great. Thanks for your consideration.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will now call a public comment on this agenda item. Seeing none in the room.
Just a reminder, Mayor Mark, we don't require that those applicants stick around until the
No.
end of the meeting. They're
Yeah.
free to go.
Like as I mentioned, it'll be 30, 40 minutes, best case for the appointments. Welcome to stick around. But otherwise, we'll certainly let you know. Okay, thank you. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none?
There are no hands raised.
And as a point of clarification, we also have the Finance Committee appointments and 3 members whose terms expire have requested reappointment, and we'll make that later in the agenda as well. Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. I do want to pull item myself 4C for a brief clarification and discussion. Other than that, does the City Council have any questions on item 4A, B, D, or E? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's any public interest or in pulling any items or asking questions. Seeing no one in the room, Madam Clerk.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. Could I entertain a, does that double as public comment, or I have to ask that? That's okay. So, could I ask for motion for consent calendar for A, B, D, and E, please?
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Item 4C is the city manager agreement amendment. And I just wanted to make, just point out quickly, which we, before any sort of further public comment or discussion, that the city council met in closed session last month to discuss internally our city manager's performance, came up with a performance review, which the vice mayor and I then sat down, had a very productive and nice conversation with our city manager. The contract was amended and updated, a new term for the next 2 years, and contract stipulations identified for that same period. And we can have any further discussion. I just wanted to make it crystal clear that that is on the agenda tonight, and that is what we're voting on with this agenda item. Any further comment or thoughts on this item? Seeing none, I'll open up for public comment. Likewise, none in the room.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. I'll call for a motion, or I can make the motion that we approve the city manager employment agreement.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. Glad to have you, Robert, for another 2 years, at the very least.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Moving on to our public hearing section of the agenda. Item 5A, consideration of collection rate application submitted by Mill Valley Refuse Service. Do I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mark. Tonight we'll be reviewing an important update regarding the proposed rate increase from Mill Valley Refuse Service, which provides waste collection services for Belvedere and other cities in Marin. As part of our due diligence, Belvedere and the other Marin member agencies have engaged R3 Consulting Services, R3 Consulting Group. They're an independent consultant to conduct a thorough analysis of Mill Valley Refuse Services application for this rate increase. Pursuant to our waste franchise agreement, Mill Valley Refuse Service may increase the rates annually based on the Consumer Price Index, also known as CPI. However, at least every 3 years, the refuse service must present a base rate application for a more detailed review. This year, Waste Service has requested a 7.86% rate increase for the fiscal year 24 through 25, citing increased expenses that are regulated to a number of things. I'm sure we'll hear from them a bit more, but in summary, those are state regulations over composting, conversion of the collection trucks to zero emission vehicles, and renewed labor contracts. R3 has reviewed the detailed financial and operational data provided by Mill Valley Refuse Service to ensure the proposed rate adjustments are justified and are in line with the terms and conditions of our franchise agreement. Their comprehensive evaluation has provided us with a clear understanding of the factors driving the rate increase and its potential impacts on our community. So with that, I'll now hand it over to representatives from R3 and Mill Valley Refuse Service.
So thank you for hosting me tonight. My name is Jim Howison. I'm a senior managing consultant with R3 Consultants. I'm basically the one who reviewed the application and came to the final conclusions on what the appropriate rate increase would be. Could I please have the next slide, please? So we're going to cover 4 areas here. One is the purpose of the rate review, the methodology, the findings, and then the historical rates versus the inflation CPI that was mentioned earlier by the city manager. Next slide, please. So the third-party review and verification includes, we confirm the mathematical accuracy of the application. We make sure that the application adheres to the past practices, conforms with requirements for allowable and non-allowable costs. For example, non-allowable cost, Mill Valley is entitled to be reimbursed, but not with profit. Allowable, they're entitled for profit based on the franchise agreement. Whether the projection provided by Mill Valley tied to the financial records, and the reasonableness of the revenue and the expenses in their projections. Next slide, please. So when we went through, basically Mill Valley requested adjustment against all of the 9 franchising agencies, which Belvedere is one of them. They are entitled to a maximum profit of 10% of allowable costs. Again, there's a difference between allowable and non-allowable. They are entitled to either a CPI adjustment or they may reapply for rate increases. Basically, it's called more like a detailed rate review where we actually review the cost. This is what we did this year. Next slide, please. So what did we do? We reviewed the financial statements, just noting the profitability of the organization to make sure that they're not making too much and they're not making too little according to the agreement. We reviewed the revenue and expense projections by each of the jurisdictions. And the rate adjustment calculation is basically you take the total costs, you compare it to the current or estimated revenue stream. That difference between the revenue and the expenses is really your rate increase. So you're bumping up revenue a little bit. So they cover their costs, but then they make a fair profit based on the terms of the contract. Next slide, please. So what did we find in our review? That the expenses were reasonable. They tied to the financial statements. They were keeping with prior practices and also industry standards. Residential revenues were reasonable and required no adjustments. Commercial revenues were reasonable and also required no adjustments. The application was very well thought out and put together. Next slide, please. So overall, the city of Belvedere is coming in at a 7.86% rate increase. That is a $5.22 a month increase for the 32-gallon residents. And if you look down towards the right side of the slide, highlighted in a bold box is the breakout of Belvedere from 66.48 to 7.86%, the 5.22, and then the 7.70, which would be your final rate. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, there are 2 components that can take place for the rate increase. One is a detailed rate review, one is the CPI. We actually went through the exercise of doing a 4-year period review If you look towards the left, the four-year average rate increase for Mill Valley came in at 3.51%. The four-year average inflation rate, as mentioned, which is the CPI, came in at 3.88. So Mill Valley is actually trending on average over a four-year period about 0.3% below inflation.
You mean Belvedere, right?
Over there, I'm sorry.
No
I
worries.
apologize. I do many of these. And I believe that's the end of the slide, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jim, hold up one sec, see if we have any questions. Do we have any questions for the R3 representative?
No, I do have some questions for Mill Valley Refuse directly, but
Can I ask Jim a question if you don't mind? Jim, you mentioned on page 27, the road impact fees for Mill Valley in particular, the city of Mill Valley, not the refuse. Can you comment on that, sort of the study requirements, the implementation of it, and perhaps even the dollar scale, per customer, and how that comes to be?
I actually think that's more of a question for Gene. We didn't
Okay.
dive into that specific. That's a different kind of analysis
Got
than
it.
rate review. So I can't answer that.
Okay.
Honestly.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
No, likewise, I have some questions for Mill Valley Refuse.
Thank you.
Hello, esteemed council. My name is Gene Del Zopa. I'm CEO of Mill Valley Refuse Service. So the purpose of us here being today is in regards to the 7.86% rate increase. I wanted to thank R3 for their report and analysis. And part of me being here today is I want to share with you all macroeconomic conditions and also factors that are driving the rate application increase, and also legislative changes that we should keep in mind on for the future. So in terms of macroeconomic conditions, CPI last year through on all items was 3.7%. Now, if you look at our rate increase, we went above that. And part of my analysis is I also wanted to kind of look at different CPI measures to keep in mind in regards to solid waste collection. In terms of producer price index by solid waste collection, that was 7.81%. And that was in 2023. So that is pertaining to the selling prices from a producer perspective with solid waste collection rates on a average city basis. In addition, CPI and sewer, water, and trash on a US city average was 5.10%. And so through the past 3 years, our average rate increase with City of Belvedere has been 4.4%. CPI over that span through our analysis, 4.17. So, and in terms of factors to consider with the rate application, where we're seeing our biggest costs and what we project out for the future, it's going to be related to labor, disposal costs, insurance, and capital expenditures. So in terms of labor, we're in year 2 of a labor union contract, and this is regards to our driver and our staff. And so last year we had to do a 15% wage increase. Now that is significant, but we had to respond to market conditions that was happening. And we also felt like we wanted to pay our employees and invest in our people so that they have an equitable and living wage, given all the increases that are happening in the Bay Area. For year 2, it's at 5.5%. And one more thing to keep in mind is we're experiencing, costs with labor and related to recycling drivers, and as well as our shop department, as well as in the office. And in terms of disposal costs, we saw an increase in our recycling processing costs by 228%. So that recycling rate went from $27.95 to $91.67. So that's a significant increase that we're currently incurring right now. And part of that, it has to do with recycling commodity prices. They can be very volatile depending on the price of paper as well as the price of metals and plastic. And in terms of insurance, we did see an increase in injuries in 2023. Part of our response to that is that we have hired a safety lead person, and we're improving our driving behaviors. We did see a decrease in accidents, 27%. So that's significant. So our safety lead person is doing everything we can to ensure all of our drivers and workers work in a safe manner. In terms of capital expenditures, we're scheduled to buy 3 trucks. Now, with those 3 trucks, it also comes with the necessary equipment needed to provide our service. And we're estimating, $167K in additional depreciation. And now for the legislative updates in the future, there's a lot going on with solid waste regulation. The one I wanted to bring attention to is zero emission vehicles. Now, part of zero emission vehicles, that's through California Air Resources Board. And we're under that legislation where we have to transition to zero emission vehicles. Now, part of that is they break out vehicle categories by milestone groups. So for milestone group 3, that's with large garbage trucks, we have to have 3 by 2029. Now, the biggest challenge with transitioning to zero emission vehicles, and this is through doing a lot of research, I work very closely with Alex on this, is it's ensuring that the truck will have the range. It'll also have the payload loss efficiency doesn't change, and the charging infrastructure. This is it's a big project for us, but we have been doing a lot of due diligence and ensuring that we have the infrastructure place needed to make that happen. And in terms of additional research that we've done is rule of thumb, it's from a lot of the studies that have happened, we will need to do a lot of diligence in terms of servicing the terrain that we are currently in Southern Marin. It's one thing to do a lot of tests where, roads are flat, but given our terrain, the topography is very diverse. It transitions from hill to flat very quickly. And we need to ensure that, the battery has enough charge in order to keep the trucks going and in order to complete the route. So that's me just kind of wrapping up how we've been doing and other aspects of the rate application. And I just want to thank you all for your time. We take environmental stewardship very seriously. And also, if you have any questions or comments, I'll be here to answer any. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have questions for Mill Valley? Please. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I did have the same question about road impact fees because we're looking at that for ourselves right now. And I was curious, Peter initially asked the question of that levy, is that just passed on to Mill Valley residents or it's passed on to all of us?
That's a great question. You are correct. That is only passed on to Mill Valley in terms of the contract that was negotiated with the city of Mill Valley.
So their residents pay that impact fee as part of their...
Correct.
Okay, that's the first question. The second question, completely unrelated, is what happened to the food waste ordinance in terms of making sure that you put that food waste in with your garden waste? Where do we stand with that now?
Yeah, so with the food waste ordinance, so part of that is related to the SB 1383 regulation. So we have amendments in place. We have very high compliance with respect to our residential and commercial and multifamily customers. And in terms of where the food waste goes, is we take it to WM Earth Care, where it it goes through 60 to 90 day process, and when it I should say decomposes back into soil. So we're obligated to provide compost service, and it's part of our existing services. So it was an easy transition for us. And in terms of, we also provide like the labeling for composting. In terms of our company's position, we're very open to a lot of emerging technologies that are coming in now with regards to composting. I'm happy to kind of share more with that with you in an additional call or through email correspondence.
Okay, it was more from a compliance perspective, because at one point there were going to be fines on residents who didn't sort that correctly. Is that hasn't come through, correct? And is it coming through?
So there is, that's a great question. Where our position is, we don't want to be necessarily the garbage police, but we also have to ensure, compliance requirements. I can follow up with you in terms of CalRecycle's stance on that, because last year, they seem to kind of be pushing back a little bit on terms of the timeline of when that will actually be pushed forward from a CalRecycle perspective. our position is that we want to be able to handle a lot of the compliance and reporting requirements related to SB 1383. And I work closely with Zero Waste Marin team as well, and that's the joint power authority with County of Marin. But I can I'll follow up with you in an additional email regards to that.
Okay. And then I should have done this myself, but I didn't have time. I know that you went to Tiburon Town Council, I think this week,
Yes.
and they had a shorter notice on their contract, correct? We're now 7 years, are we, until our contract is up? Because I think we gave this will be 3 years since we gave notice.
I believe you're right on that.
I was just curious what they decided to do in terms of are they putting the contract out to bid, or what exactly happened?
So they chose to do part of the contract is there's options for extensions, and they're choosing as they basically have an action to do nothing, in which they chose to do, and to get a 5-year extension. So we're going to be getting a 5-year extension with the city of Tiburon.
That's interesting. Good to know. And I wanted to thank you because your guys back all the way down Eucalyptus Road where I live, and it's really impressive to watch them do that and never hit anything. So thank you for that.
I wish I had my drivers here with me. I'll definitely pass along that.
They're
feedback.
awesome, I have to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a few questions too. Thank you so much. My first question was sort of follow on to Councilmember Wilkinson's about SB 1383. I believe you've worked somewhat with Kathy Huber about this and the good work she's doing with painted bins. She assisted us in the climate action plan update and has woven, so we have woven that initiative into our own general plan. So thank you for your participation. I also want to thank you for your really deep dive into the data and the business model so that we can really understand better than we have in the past how Mill Valley Refuse is really serving us. So thank you. Backing up to SB 83, I know you don't want to be the garbage police. I thought that there was going to be some sort of random audit requirement, and there are other quite complicated means of compliance with that. And I, with a request to Mayor Mark, perhaps, I think it would be very useful in a couple months for you to return, if it can be put on the agenda, with a brief explanation of what is required from the residents, not as part of your rate increase, but just as part of the public engagement process. I think there is a lot of confusion around that, and because there are state law requirements, it would be helpful for Belvedere residents to really understand that better. So perhaps we can do that at a later time.
Yeah, I would be more than happy to come back to provide updates with SB 1383. And what you're referring to, you are right. We are required to do route review audits. Part of that is performing randomized selections and observing what's in the bin. And if there is contamination, we provide a notice. We do not fine. We provide a notice, and we have typically when we've had conversations, face-to-face is a lot easier in terms of, hey, we noticed this in your bin. Like, we have container labeling requirements per SB 1383 to ensure, it doesn't happen again in the future. What is also good is our drivers are very trained in terms of what's accepted and what's not accepted. So that's the process in terms of route reviews. But I would be more than happy to come back to provide kind of updates on what we're doing in regards to implementation of SB 1383.
That'd be great. I think that would be very helpful. Secondly, I am aware of the, maybe because I'm on the legislative committee, but of the new zero emission vehicles requirements. That certainly is a burden on you. And as Belvedere's TAM commissioner, I have also heard that there are some grant opportunities for n- not only the vehicles where owned by jurisdictions, not necessarily by vendors serving such jurisdictions, but possibly, um, but also countywide uh, opportunities for grant funding with regard to the infrastructure. So I'm glad you're working with Zero Waste Marin. They're probably on top of that, and perhaps a granular request to them might produce some help in that regard. I don't know, but it's just a suggestion.
I can share some of the grant funding opportunities that we have looked at. So Carl Moyer Grant has funding opportunities with regards to transitioning to zero emission vehicles. And California also has an HFIT program, kind of more so works as a coupon. The main hurdle that we have to get through is we have to work with PG&E in order to get site electrification. And there's a lot of challenges with that in terms of existing infrastructure, behind the meter work, getting the right transformer, same switchgear. And it's, we're committed to doing what we can when it pertains to charging infrastructure. But I am bullish in terms of the technology is rapidly improving. And, you know, I also want Mill Valley Refuse Service to be aligned with California's climate change goals. And it's very important. And it's I do think it's in the future, it's going to send the right message and will probably have impact that goes beyond California.
Do you have solar plus battery at your yard?
At this time, we do not. However, we have worked with a solar consultant as to what that plan would look like in terms of our site. Because part of our site, we can capture some of that solar energy to help with the charging infrastructure. But that is something that we are looking at.
Just make sure you charge when the sun is up. Otherwise, you're charging from natural gas, and that's pretty stupid.
Very true.
I'd also encourage you to reach out to Marin Clean Energy on that, because they might be able to help you with that as well.
Thank you.
That's great. And then the other, my last question, I asked about 5 years ago, but there may be an update. We have many part-time resident property owners in Belvedere. And there has been a question in the past, so I'll just renew it, as to whether there might be monthly service rather than biweekly service for the many people in Belvedere who may not be full-time residents. So as I say, it did not gain traction when I asked several years ago, but it is something that I feel incumbent to mention again when we have these new considerations of costs. So just keep that in mind. There's certainly a market for that.
I appreciate that. In terms of like our service structure, you know, there's requirements for us to, you know, service weekly. However, I'd be willing to kind of speak with residents to figure out if there is something that we can do with regards to that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. That's helpful. And once again, thank you for giving us such a detailed analysis this time around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is quite basic, pertaining literally to Belvedere streets, and that is that we're involved in trying to keep our streets cleaner because of some wildlife issues that we have. And one of the things that we did was we added a trash bin over on West Shore Road. Okay. And there's been some discussion and thought of putting a second one somewhere on Belvedere Island, because there isn't anything for when people are walking dogs. For them, they have to carry that doggy bag for potentially a mile or 45 minutes to an hour on their walk with no ability. So the West Shore one's actually been really successful. But what I don't know if we checked, does that increase the charge because of an extra stop that wasn't there previously. And if we were to put in one more trash container somewhere on Belvedere Island, would that be an issue for you? And would you like to help, if it's okay, would you like to help us determine the best place on Belvedere Island for ease of your drivers?
So part of our contract with City of Belvedere, you know, we have to provide with you all city services with an additional can. We'll take care of it. I don't think that would be something that would be very, you know, significant. And in terms of placement, we'd be more than happy to work together on this to figure out best location for that city service, because city cans are very important. You have to keep there has to be access to public bins and whatnot. So we've been more than happy to help you with that.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Just real quick, with the comment about the zero emission vehicles, does the state have any sort of flexibility with that? You would think that capacity issues are very, very focused and very particular for your industry. You think that a low emission vehicle would be almost more practical and more realistic long-term option there? Is there black and white, you know, zero emission by the state, or is there some phase-in opportunity?
They gave us options with how to transition. And one of the options that we're under is the milestone group approach. So part of that, it's piecemealing that transition, but you are right that it's a huge ask, and it's a very ambitious goal. And I imagine it's going to be contingent on, you know, access to the infrastructure that's needed. And, you know, our stance is to let a lot of the cities know about it, is just to be fully transparent. And if anything were to kind of change in terms of them being like, if there possibly, you know, more grants available or possibly being subsidized, or the cost itself of an electric vehicle goes down too, that's something that, you know, we have to be on the forefront of, because it is challenging from, you know, from a budgeting perspective, you know, because the cost it's very significant. And it's also, it's a new technology, and we have to ensure that the truck will be able to do a route. And part of our routes, it's challenging going from hill to flat, and then ensuring that there's no battery degradation. That's another potential issue. But there is a lot of other technologies coming out. Hydrogen is also coming out, but I have not seen, we did see one at Waste Expo, but we need to get more information as to what that looks like. So there are options, but for now, you know, we have to move forward with zero emission vehicles just to stay in compliance with the regulation.
Yeah, it just seems that you know, certainly not the absolute essentialness of a first responder, but you don't want battery capacity failure on your routes at any time. It just the consequences of that are pretty bad for yourselves as well as a community. So
yeah,
thank you so much.
Awesome.
Seeing no more questions, why don't we open this up to public comment? No, none here.
We have Mr. Rothman.
Thank you. Hey, Bill, go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, thank you very much. The garbage business is really kind of messy in terms of the arrangement of responsibilities. It's my understanding, and if the guest could correct me if I'm wrong, that basically what you do is you haul things. What I'm unclear about is when you take the plastics or the paper or whatever up to Marin Sanitary, do they pay you to give it to them, or do you pay them to give it to them? And if you're just hauling the stuff, then we really can't hold you responsible for any costs that are other than hauling things, because that's what you do. And so when you said that the recycling costs have increased, I didn't understand that. It was a big figure, but I'm not sure if you could explain that sort of. Is it that Marin Sanitary tells you, well, we can't get the same price for the cardboard, so we can't give you as much money for it. How exactly does that work? And for instance, with respect to the thermoforms, Marin Sanitary, we're told to put the thermoform clamshells into the garbage bin, not into the plastics. On the other hand, Jason Wilcock, who's the director of recycling up at Marin Sanitary, when the thermoforms get to them, if it comes in the plastics bin, which you tell us not to put it in because they tell you not to tell us not to put it in, they take it out and they're actually able to sell it at a profit. Now, if you were handling the whole works, then we'd say to you, hey, that doesn't seem to make any sense. But it doesn't make any sense. Can you say something about whether you do anything other than hauling? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gene, do you mind having a quick response to that?
Yeah. Like many different solid waste management companies in the United States, we do transport a lot of different kinds of material. And part of our job with environmental stewardship is that we have to ensure what we're transporting is clean. Now, with regards to, recycling processing costs, there's a lot of macroeconomic factors in play as a result of commodity prices. And when we have to incur those recycling processor costs, but we do a lot more than just transporting the material. And, I think in the future, we do have a lot of plans ahead for Mill Valley Refuse Service. And part of it is we have to continue to offer excellent customer service. And so I appreciate the comment and the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There are no other hands raised.
Thank you. Bring it back for any discussions or a motion to approve Mill Valley Refuse Service rate increase of 7.86% for fiscal year 24-25. Further comment or thought?
No, I can make the motion if there's not further comment.
Please.
I can second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Moving on to item 5B, discussion and possible decision to adopt a resolution approving the City of Belvedere's 24-25 annual operating and capital budget.
So, good evening, Mayor Mark and members of City Council. Since the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget was discussed in the detail at the May meeting, we'll only focus on the changes since then. And actually, there have been very few revisions between the draft and the one in front of you tonight. On the revenue side, projected revenue from the fire tax has been adjusted upwards by just over $5,000. This increase is due to a slight increase in the state's price and population data compared to the estimated amount. As a result, the amount to be transferred from the general fund will also be slightly reduced. Unfortunately, the state price and population data were not available until mid-May, so it was not included in the May draft budget. The second revenue change in the budget includes an increase in the Measure AA funds allocated to the city, Measure AA fund allocation that the city receives from the Transportation Authority of Marin. These funds are distributed annually and were initially estimated at $40,000. However, the city's actual allocation for fiscal year 24-25 is $63,703. These additional funds have been earmarked for structural repairs to the top of Upper Cedar Lane. And that brings us to the expenditure side. We've added $4,000 to the administrative budget to increase the coyote mitigation line item, bringing the total to $8,000. This will support ongoing engagement with Humane Wildlife Control for monitoring and mitigating coyote activity in Belvedere. Under the non-departmental category, there has been an increase in Marin General Services Agency's budget from $5,599 to $5,888. This increase of $289 is due to higher general administrative expenses. The Marin General Service Agency also oversees the Animal Control Program contract in partnership with Marin County. The contract cost is set to increase from $29,088 to $41,970 for the next fiscal year. This reflects a $12,882 increase. The notable increase in cost is attributed to the rise in coyote intervention calls within the last reporting period. However, it is anticipated that there will be a reduction in next year's expenditure as a result of the ongoing coyote mitigation efforts with Humane Wildlife Control. We also wanted to take the opportunity to address Councilmember Chemnitzer's questions that were raised at the last meeting. In the capital budget, we have updated the description for the community center founder's room to reflect the heating and cooling upgrades along with the furniture replacement. Also, regarding the $100,000 allocated for the comprehensive fee study, several different study options are available and staff are currently working to refine the scope of the work to be conducted. At this time, it is recommended that the $100,000 be retained. When everything is said and done, this budget will exceed the general fund reserve policy goal by $103,000, which is slightly less than the previous version. However, it still projects that the city will meet its reserve goals for the next 5 years. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for our Director of Administrative Services?
I don't know if you know the answer to this. I guess my concern is about the close to $13,000 increase in the animal control program. And we actually had the same contract with Humane Wildlife Control in the year 23-24. And although we had that contract and we had all the monitoring and mitigation going on, there somehow is a $13,000 increase that's confusing to me. I'm also not sure that the thought that there would be a reduction in the next year, given the same coyote mitigation efforts. I'm not sure that's necessarily a logical conclusion because, as I said, we already had the contract throughout that whole year. So one question I have is, it's the statement is that the jurisdiction costs are for animals handled and population. Is that person population or animal population?
Yeah, it's person population, not animal population.
Okay.
Yeah, the formula that we have broadly, Marin County administers the program for us and pays 30% of all the agency's total cost for animal control. The 70% that's remaining is split between all the other agencies based on that formula, 50-50, 50% being population-based, the size of your agency, and the other 50% being the volume of animal calls or intervention calls that they get and have to respond to. So my guess, this budget change came fairly late in our process. We haven't really had the opportunity to connect with them and dive into the data on where that increase is coming from, but it's from the previous reporting period. We'll look into that greater and see whether or not there was an error made. My assumption is that as our calls go down, so with our costs,
Our
they're more-
population is certainly not increasing.
That's not
so
changing,
it
correct?
Can't be that.
Yeah, so we're going to look into it.
And I'm not sure our calls would go through them either, right? With our
Again, getting back to the reporting period, that's really the area of question here. When were those calls coming in? We'll have to dive into the data. I don't think that they're getting a lot of calls for service since we've hired the consultant to help us. So if that's true, then the cost figures, the numbers should go down going forward.
Is Marin Humane under this umbrella?
Yes, it is.
One thing to keep in mind is early in the process, we had a conversation with the CEO, Nancy, of Marin Humane, who at the time increased their patrols for Belvedere. under the mindset that we already have a contract with you, we can increase the patrols. I'm hopeful, and I don't know if that's necessary, or if in fact they've actually done that. So that might be something to point out, that I don't know if they have done that, number one. Number two, if that increased patrol or increased capacity is maybe driving that as well. Because that wasn't our expectation, that it was.
She implied that that was included in the current contract and would not be an additional cost.
Okay. I can look at the record on that, and again, look at the data and find out what's driving this.
Yeah, it would be really helpful. And I did just want to jump back, and it's not a question, but yes, we did increase the contract from 4,000 to 8,000 for this coming fiscal year. But I did want to mention that that's actually a $17,000 decrease from the one that we had this year.
That's
So,
correct.
yeah, so I think that's a good sign. It may, yes, it may have increased, but it's still quite a bit less.
It's still a
so
reduction,
a
yes.
huge reduction, yeah. And the only other thing that I wanted to clarify is something that I made a statement last month, that I had hoped that there would be grant money, and I was counting on grant money to pay for the consultants for our third housing element submission. But I was mistaken, and that grant money has already been spent. So therefore, it's my understanding that the consultants will be paid from the general fund.
That's correct.
Thank you.
The LEAP grant has been, we've already sent in the reimbursement request.
Okay, thank you so much.
I wanted to just actually add a little detail when Helga talked about the 100,000 for fee studies, because I know Nancy had concerns about that. And so we've done we have done more work on that. And so in terms of the comprehensive user fee study, we've been given a range there, and we'll probably be on the low end of about 25 to 50,000. And there is a good purpose in doing it, because there are admin overheads and technology that we're not integrating right now, and that will allow us to pass on more of the cost, but also improve productivity through those introducing new technologies. And the reason we've left more into that budget than just that amount is because there's also some possibility that we might look at some development impact fees, or in relation to the housing element, potentially some kind of affordable housing fee to help fund a fund. And the reason certainly most of this is so important is that although we have good reserves and we maintain those reserves, we are increasingly going to struggle financially. You know, we're spending $1 million a year on pensions right now, including all the extra funding that we're doing, which is also true of many other cities. So we're not different there. But where we are different is in relation to our fire, which is extraordinary. And it used to be virtually no subsidy. And now we're at about $1.3 million of our $10 million general fund is going to fund fire, which means cutting things elsewhere or not investing. And so we really are looking to make sure that we're claiming everything we can back on user fees, so that we're not subsidizing it from other elements. So I know that you and James have done a lot of work, and it was very successful to get some of those planning and building fees up, but there's probably more room that we can't do without a comprehensive fee study. So that's really why.
Understood. And I really appreciate the hard work that's gone into this.
Thank you. Any more questions? Just one clarification. I asked earlier our city manager about the timetable for Mallard Point and pushing it ahead and expectations towards the latter part of this fiscal year. And I think I'm accurate in stating that there's no revenue associated with that project, nor any costs associated with that project considered in this budget. We'll review that either in this fiscal year, should it come, and those new sources of revenues through fees come about, or more likely put them into the next fiscal budget.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Open this item up for public comment, our 24-25 fiscal annual budget and capital budget. Seeing no comment here, Madam Clerk.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. Can I bring it back for any further comment, or in the absence of that, a motion to approve the annual operating capital budget for fiscal year 24-25, as well as the 5-year capital plan.
I'm happy to move that. And as always, thank you to Helga for all her hard work.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much for the Finance Committee, as well as Sally pointed out, Helga's very, very deep dive into this every single year. With that, I'll move on to item 5C, discussion on possible adoption of resolution levying previously approved special tax for fire and emergency medical services and fixing the rates thereof for the fiscal year 24-25. It's probably still Helga, right?
Yes. Thank you again, Mayor Mark. In your packet this evening is a resolution to levy the previously approved special tax for fire protection and emergency medical services. This is an annual item we need to pass to levy the tax that was approved by voters in 2000. The fees per parcel for the upcoming fiscal year will be $1,028.02 for residential dwelling units, $1,170.16 for commercial occupancies, and $205.82 for vacant parcels. The revenue received from this assessment is spent only on fire services. However, it does not cover the full cost of fire service and will require a transfer from the general fund to cover the difference. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Helga?
I have one question, and Sally, you may also knows something about this. Have we always made contributions under our fire contract with Tiburon? Have we always made any kind of contribution toward their pension obligations? For some reason, I thought that we had not, but this refers to the 115 fund, and that may be something different. So I just want some clarification on that.
So their required contributions to CalPERS, of course, we help fund because it's just a part of their annual expense. And in terms of the 115, it's complicated accounting wise, but eventually we're going to have to absorb that cost. And so therefore we're choosing to pay it now and spread it over time rather than wait for it to be paid into CalPERS, which is when it technically is treated as an expense, because then it would be a big cost. So we're just, again, it's a smoothing exercise, and we will be at some point responsible for that. Whilst it's in the 115, it's technically not an expense, but we're choosing to pay it to allow smoothing.
Okay, thank you. And then to the other question, that our contract with Tiburon does include a contribution toward their pensions. For some reason, I thought that it did not, but I may be mistaken.
Again, our contract is just to cover a relevant share of annual expenses, and because your pension contributions are included, it is included.
That explains that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just real quick, I wanted to highlight the point Councilmember Wilkinson made previously on the budget item. The 1,028 annual tax for residents compares, if I did my math correctly, to a $2,074 cost to the fire district for 24-25, and last year those numbers were $1,928 and $984 respectively. So the revenue received for the fire service is, roughly half of what we end up paying, and it's subsidized by the general fund. Thereafter, highlighting the long-term budget concerns we have about that impact on our city's economics.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. See if there's no more comments or questions. No, sorry, Vice Mayor.
No, that's okay. As we all suffer dealing with this, and it's upsetting, I had asked, and I know we've had the discussion before, if there was a chance for Belvedere to sit on the board of the Tiburon Fire Agency. certainly realize there isn't, but they do have monthly meetings, and I'm assuming they're open to the public. And so, we do have non-voting representatives on the library agency. We have non-voting on, I think, the disaster agency, and other committees. And I wondered if that was an opportunity that we could present to them, would be to have a non-voting representative for Belvedere. And if it couldn't be formal, I wonder if we could create an informal so that perhaps someone would go monthly and at least listen and bring up, if necessary, issues for Belvedere, and just be there to annoy them. I don't know.
I think it's it's a good idea. It's an interesting idea. I'll look into it. I'm not sure. I think it'd probably be more informal rather than a formal position, but it's worth researching.
We should ask John Wilton. But I mean, I think we should ask someone from the finance committee personally.
Thank you. Open this item up to public comment. Again, seeing no one in the audience here.
No hands raised.
Thank you. Bring it back to the city council for further discussion and or a motion to adopt the resolution to levy the previously approved special tax for fire and emergency medical services and fixing the rates for 24-25.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Moving on to other scheduled items. Thank you so much, Helga.
Peter, do you mind me just making one extra comment there then? Because obviously this is the elephant in the room, and I don't want people to think that this isn't something that we're thinking about through the finance committee to find solutions, because we can't keep going this way forever.
Item 6A, adopt 2 resolutions approving calling of a general municipal election on November 5th, 2024, and requesting the Board of Supervisors consolidate this election with the County of Marin's November 5th, 2024 election. Do we have a report on this, Robert?
We do, from our city clerk, Beth.
Thank you.
Mayor, Mark, and council. In December, the terms of office of council member Nancy Chemnitzer, James Lynch, and Sally Wilkinson will expire. The city must notify the Marin County Register of Voters of the city's intention to conduct a general municipal election on November 5th, 2024, for the purpose of electing 3 members to the city council by the adoption of 2 resolutions. This evening, council is being asked to adopt a resolution calling a general municipal election on November 5th, 2024, and to adopt a resolution requesting Marin County Board of Supervisors to consolidate the election with any other elections being conducted by the County of Marin. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yes, I have a comment. This December, I will have served 2 full terms. In addition, because of the change in the primary schedule, that will be 8.5 years. And we have a term limit of 3 terms in Belvedere, but it is convention and it has been followed in the past that council members serve 2 terms. And so I would like to announce tonight that I will not be seeking re-election as an incumbent. And I'm letting you know that tonight because the way the resolution is drafted, it indicates that by notifying you now, and council can correct me if I'm wrong, by notifying you now, the filing date would be, that we know now that the filing date would be extended till August 14th. In the distant past, there has been some confusion about whether that extra week of filing date was in effect when incumbents have not um, given notice of their intention not to run. So I think it will make the process simpler for the residents and potential candidates to know of my intention tonight. And that would require an amendment of the resolution, I think.
Thank you. I do think, though, that it needs to clarify it because the incumbents still need to file the week prior to that, correct? So we still need to articulate those two dates, but show that the final date for all non-incumbents would be the 14th, therefore.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Any further questions for our city clerk?
Beth, just a question in terms of clarification of the website, which is where most people, I guess, will go to get that information. When will the website have the relevant paperwork updated?
We're not allowed to post until July 15th when the date opens. So that'll be when everything is updated.
Thank you. Very clear and helpful. Thank you. This important dates is a great document. Let me open this up to public comment. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. So we need to adopt both these resolutions, right? Yes. Calling for general election and consolidating it with the municipal elections of the county. Can I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk, for that presentation. 6C, discussion and possible action on a revocable license for right-of-ways on 6C Madrona. Hi, Sammy.
I need to advise that I'm recused from this matter.
Okay. I missed 6B.
I
I'm
was going to say, any chance we could switch them?
I apologize. Sammy, let me hold off. That's my mistake. 6B, we're going to make the appointments, going back to 3C. Sorry about that. So why don't we start, as you laid out, with the Finance Committee. We are going to reappoint 3 incumbents who have requested a reappointment: Will Lyon, David Walker, and John Wilton. I can make that motion to reappoint Will Lyon, David Walker, and John Wilton to the Finance Committee.
Second.
Thank you. I apologize. Even though we had an open forum, I mean, we're happy to call it, but even though we had it during the interviews.
Yeah, we arguably had it sufficiently already for the planning
I'll-
commission
Okay.
appointments, but not for these other appointments. So I think it's safer to take public comment for all of them.
So public comment for, well, I can do it for each one, I guess, right?
I think how the motions are proposed is that we're going to do the finance committee appointments first. So we take public comment on that, then continue that matter and
Okay.
then move on to the second motion.
So
I'll take public comment.
Public comment on the Finance Committee motion.
There are
Seeing
no
none?
hands raised.
Thank you. So as I was mentioning, the motion to reappoint Will Lyon, David Walker, and John Wilton to the Finance Committee. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Then we have to go through each one individually. So I'll stick in the same order to appoint applicants to fill open seats on the Belvedere-Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee. And there was an appointment last month, so this one is for Jeff Arguero, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I can make that motion to appoint Jeff Arguero to the Belvedere-Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee.
Second. Chemnitzer.
Oh. I didn't call for open. Do I have to do each individual one? I'm sorry. So a public comment. There's some concern.
I'm sorry, we're just trying to keep the name straight down here as well. Yes, please, we should take public comment.
So public comment on the appointment to the Belvedere-Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee. Seeing none here.
Mayor Mark, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. To appoint Jeff Argrio, motion to the Belvedere Tiburon Joint Recreation Committee.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're going to make one appointment to the Parks, Open Spaces and Lanes Committee. And that is, the candidate is Wayne Stacy. Any further comment or discussion on that? No? Open public comment on that?
No hands raised.
Thank you. I'll move to appoint Wayne Stacy to the Parks, Open Spaces and Lanes Committee.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. And we have 3 spots on the Planning Commission, and we have 3 candidates. Is there any discussion of the 3 candidates under consideration? Any further discussion, I should say? Seeing none, I'll open it for public comment on the 3 candidates, Justin Boutros, Jenna Watson, and Don Shinsky. Again, seeing none.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. I'll move that the 3 candidates, Justin Boutros, Jenna Watson, and Don Shinsky be appointed to the Belvedere Planning Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we've done the Finance Committee. So I believe that's all the appointments. Correct? Wonderful. And item 6C, which Councilmember Kimnitzer is recused from. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Now I will turn it over to our Associate Planner for 60 Madrona Avenue, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mark and council members. For your consideration this evening is an application for revocable license at 60 Madrona Avenue. The project site contains an existing single-family residence. The parcel does not have on-site parking. Pedestrian access is provided via a set of stairs on the left side of the lot. In February 2024, the applicant received Planning Commission approval to construct a new garage and carport. The project included a new concrete driveway to provide access to the new garage. A portion of the driveway would encroach into the Madrona Avenue right-of-way. The applicant requests a revocable license to construct the new driveway and guardrail within the Madrona Avenue right-of-way. Existing stairs, landings, retaining walls, and landscaping on the left side of the parcel would remain. Here, site photographs showed the existing conditions. 3 of the 6 bay trees within the right-of-way would be removed to construct the new driveway. The trees would be relocated on the right side yard. Here, the elevation shows the proposed garage and driveway. The proposed guardrails would be 42 inches tall and made of cedar wood. Staff suggests the project benefits the public as the improvements relieve parking congestion by providing access to off-street parking. Staff believes the findings for the revocable license can be made and recommends approval for private improvements in the Madrona Avenue right-of-way. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions for our Associate Planner?
Sam, I have just one question. So creating the 2 parking spaces means you lose 3 public parking spaces from the street, correct?
That's correct.
But yeah, I'm not so familiar with this, but in terms of that is still regarded as a public benefit because you're removing the number of cars parked on the street, and so that helps with traffic flow. Is that the argument?
That's how I would say it, and yes.
So there's nothing unusual about, you've often approved things where you've lost more parking spaces on the street than you're creating off-site because it's just widening the road effectively because there's less parking?
we have approved revocable licenses where we lose parking on the street. Interestingly, I just pulled up my laptop to see the parking situation up there. I'm not sure if it's exactly 3 spaces that we're losing. I don't know, it looks like a big, long striped area. How many cars actually fit there? I don't know the answer to. I don't know if you went to the site and sort of eyeballed it, but the architect is here and maybe he can provide more.
I mean, I
detail.
didn't look at this site, but my sense is that's not a terribly busy road in terms of parking, correct? So taking away those on-street parking is not going to be detrimental to anybody.
Correct.
Okay.
Additionally, it's very narrow there, so I
Yes,
think
it will help.
would
Yeah.
provide a safer.
Okay, makes sense.
driveway.
That's all I had. Thank you.
And is the parking referenced in the 2 spots? Did they only put 2 cars there? It looks like it's a 3 cars could fit on that apron. Or are there only 2 shown in the diagram?
In the
That one.
proposal.
Yeah.
There's an ADU in between those 2 cars.
Oh.
So which wasn't under planning commission purview, so we kind of just left it
So-
empty, but
So
there
80
will not be a car there. There'll
So
be
an ADU above grade there.
Yes.
Got it.
Wow, congratulations on getting another ADU there.
Okay. Vice Mayor, any questions?
No, I attended the planning commission meeting when this was discussed.
Thank you.
So I'm familiar with it. Thank you.
I don't have any questions either. I can I guess we don't make findings, we just approve. I'm stuck in my planning commission role there. I will ask if there's any comment from the public on this. Seeing none, Madam Clerk,
Mayor Mark, there are no hands raised.
thank you so much. In that case, I'll bring it back to seek a motion to approve the local license for 60 Madrona Avenue.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Sammy, thank you so much for the presentation. We now move to our open forum, an opportunity for any citizen to briefly discuss address the city council on any item not agendized this evening. I don't see anybody in the room with their hand raised or moving toward the
Mayor
podium.
Mark, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. So close the open forum and I will adjourn tonight's meeting and thank everybody for attending. And good night.